want to try it out.
Eric found the two Indian ringneck parrots, later to be known as Kashi and Archimedes, at a bird store.
Good bird, Kashi.
They were wallflowers, sad silhouettes looking out from behind bars for that special someone, receiving glances but only passing attention from the shifting customers in the store. Those working at the store cared for them well and were obviously doing everything they could to find a home for them. But no one was stepping up to the plate. Eric watched as the two birds were taken out of their cages.
Go get him. Go get him.
Tried to flap, and fell to the ground. The few people that tried to hold them gave up in frustration. Most turned their eyes on the other ringnecks from the breeder's clutch, those not visibly disabled. But Eric's eyes kept being drawn back to the wallflowers. They were adorable, and his heart warmed to them. He wasn't drawn to them because he wanted something pretty that talks. He felt compassion that was turning into something more. Eric saw that their feet worked, but moved slowly. This often caused them to fall when held. He knew that these birds would not last long in most homes. Few people would be willing to give them the extra care that they would need. Worse, it seemed doubtful that anyone would take them at all, and that left their fate hanging in the balance. He made the decision. He would take them home and give them the best life that he could. What was it like after he took them home? Their slow-moving feet and inability to flap was immediately obvious, but their breathing problems started later. They appeared like asthma attacks. They would start gasping for breath. The attacks progressively worsened, usually a few weeks apart. As they got more severe, it left them lying on the floor gasping. Kashi had the worst time, and passed out a few times near the end, only to start breathing again. Kashi was the first to suffer, but Archimedes fell to the same fate. Their vet, Dr. Nemitz in Orange County, California, documented these attacks and kept x-rays to monitor the deterioration. As their condition worsened, the cartilage of the trachea lost rigidity and would then collapse, much like a paper straw collapses when trying to drink a thick milkshake. It would spring back, but each time became narrower than before. Toward the end, the airway had only an opening of about a millimeter, roughly the thickness of a typical thumbnail, for air to pass. Dr. Nemitz ruled out fungal infections and other more common non-genetic causes. The location of the collapse was in their chest cavity, which made operating a life-threatening procedure. If the collapse had been closer to the top of the trachea, in their neck, he would have had a good chance of surgically removing the bad section. The breathing problems began for Kashi around the age of 5. Despite excellent veterinary care, she died at the age of 7. For Archimedes, these genetic defects took longer to fully develop. Eric hoped he would not suffer from breathing problems, but they began when he was about 10 and a half. Archimedes died just a few months shy of 12. These were genetic problems. Most genetic problems, but not all, come from inbreeding. Kashi died at 7. Archimedes lived nearly 12 years, but he died in Eric's hands from the same condition just 2 months ago. While their story is sad, they had plenty of fun and lived a good life, even if it was cut short. They loved quiet corners on coffee shop patios, where they could observe the hustle and bustle of life, just like wallflowers. Kashi loved to be hand-fed so much, it is why it took 3 weeks for Eric to bring her home before she was weaned. He visited them every day in the shop, waiting for her to wean herself. Archimedes was always the skittish one, and never liked to be touched. He would step up readily, and, despite his reserve, was the gentlest bird. He never bit Eric once. When Archimedes finally allowed Eric to scratch his head, at the age of 10, it was the biggest breakthrough. From then until he died, he grew to love his head scratches immensely, and they formed a special bond. Archimedes and Cautius were given a good life. They had a loving home and the best of care. Sadly, in our world, most parrots don't live with that kind of affection and dedication. I know. Our flock here is mostly made up of the discarded and unwanted. There is a silver lining in this story, though. Their vet was able to prove that this condition exists for the first time in history. They were the first birds that a vet could document from cradle to grave with this condition, and he has used that knowledge to save other birds suffering from this. His work with them has become part of the standard veterinary training for avian specialists. What did Dr. Nemitz learn? When performing the necropsy, he learned that the overall structure had lost rigidity, and no surgery could have saved them. He created procedures for birds with this condition, which have been successful. They involve a Lupron shot to stop the calcium loss, and a higher calcium diet to rebuild the integrity of the trachea. This was successful with a female eclectus bird he treated. Coincidentally, this condition was one he had been studying intensively. With the new insights he gained from Eric's beloved Kashi and Archimedes, he created a presentation and training course that is now taught at avian veterinary seminars around the world. Eric continued to be inspired to learn more, to help other birds in need. Dr. Nemitz shares his research with him, photographs and presentation materials based on the doctor's study of their physiology. For instance, he found that this condition also affected their muscles and skeletal development, which is why their feet worked slowly. He found that their wings could not flap properly because they were missing a tendon that acts as a rubber band to pull their wings back during flight. A bird uses their chest muscles to flap their wings down, and the tendon acts as a rubber band to snap the wings back, completing the flapping motion. Because they did not have this tendon, or it was underdeveloped, they could contract the muscle and twitch their wings down, but they would not snap back to properly flap and enable flight. Eric has a few words he would like me to share with you. Birds are incredibly complex, both mentally and physically. Their bodies are so efficient, far more efficient than a human's needs to be, in order to allow them the physically demanding ability to fly. They live in a four-dimensional world where they must gauge not just horizontal movement, but also vertical. Their spatial awareness is so far beyond that of humans. We, as caretakers, must be aware of their physiological differences to provide a better, safer environment for them to live as they have evolved to live, as birds.
Science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Evidence is evidence. It's public. Everybody can look at the evidence and assess it, and eventually, if there's enough evidence, come to the same conclusion.
The Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos, a nonprofit charity dedicated to the empowerment of captive parrots and public awareness.